Oh, there's 41 cars on there. Um, the drivetrain and the motors are strong enough to pull more. That's up at 3.5% grade, and this thing's not even struggling. But the chassis is struggling because of weight distribution and getting the right spring tension on the trucks. First I was having a problem with it pulling that much weight. The rear driving trucks for the drivers would derail. So I fixed that problem. Then I started having a problem with the front derailing. And what happens is, let me stop this here so I can show you. What happens is, once I put new rubber tires on this thing, got rid of the Rivarossi ones, it was able to pull more weight and no wheel spin. But what happens is, as it, like when a drag strip car leaves the line, the front wheels come up off the ground. So what would happen is, the front of the truck would come up off the ground. When it was coming around the top of the hill, because it was pulling so much weight, the back half would basically derail. Front half. And then I started to fix that problem, then it started happening with the front. So I added more spring tension to it, so there's more tension on the front. The rear, what I was able to do on the rear set of, this is the front truck, but on the rear set of drivers, what I did was I stopped the movement of the last set of wheels so they don't move up and down. Normally they would have had a spring in there to keep a little bit of tension on there just for the electrical connection when they were part of the 080s. But I don't really need that. So what I did was I stopped the rear wheels. This is the section that I added right here. I stopped them from traveling upward. And that stopped the front truck from lifting up off the ground. As you see, unfortunately, I have a blind driver hidden in there. I don't know if you can see it, what's left of it. I hate it. That's why I put it in the front, behind the pistons. I didn't need it for the front. Reason being is the spacing on the wheels is slightly different. And when I put the locomotive together, I put these two wheels closer when I put this section in there, and these are further apart. All I needed was a smidgen. And now I could get rid of that blind driver and put it on there, but I will not be able to run through. I can run on 18-inch radius turns with it, believe it or not. It slows down, it bogs down because the rims bite the edge of the rails. But I can't run through a couple of the switches because of it. So this is a temp layout. So I did what I had to do. I do have a spare set of drivers to change that when I get around to it. And like I said, there's no blind drivers on the front, and I don't have an issue. But I do have to share this up so this doesn't come up off the track. That way I'll be able to pull more. I'll be able to pull more weight. Right now, the maximum it'll pull without a problem is about 45 cars. Anything more than that, that front truck lifts off the ground coming around that last turn and derails. So something will probably derail. One of the cars probably will, but I mean it makes it right up the hill. There's a little bit of wheel slipping, which is normal. It actually looks cool to see the rods moving differently. Right now I'm only running at 7 volts and it's pulling all that weight up the hill. That's not too bad. See, what would happen, it was right about here, coming into this corner. Actually, it was the other corner. The front truck would come slightly off the ground, and not all the time, but sometimes the wheels would lift up high enough that they would come off the track. So I added some more spring tension to tighten up the chassis, and that fixed the problem. So now I'm able to pull, 41, 43, 45 cars without it lifting, but any more than that, it still lifts. I won't be pulling more than 40 cars with this thing anyway. I'm just doing a test. This is a horrible layout. It's on the attic of a floor. Cheap track that's warped from the heat. And the fact that this homemade piece of junk is riding the rails, it's amazing. And it has really good low speed for a homemade locomotive. Dual motors. You can hear the motor hum. That's pretty good low speed. I mean, it's just as good when it's not pulling any weight. The low speed is. I don't particularly care for that blind driver. That's why I put it behind the valve gear so you can't see it. These locomotives were made in 1918, after the Santa Fe version, which was a bust. So, Virginia made them. The boilers were bigger. They didn't run out of steam. Max speed was about 20 miles an hour. They could pull 110 coal cars. They were really workhorses. And then later in the career, they, I guess, this is from what I read, they just started using them as helpers to help other locomotives push up the hill. And then in the 40s, they scrapped them. So they had a 20-year run. Unlike the triplex, those things were garbage. Top speed on those things were about 8 miles an hour. I actually have one here that I built somewhere. So now that I got the chassis all set, I'll sand this thing down and paint it. A car derailing somewhere. I'll give it some paint and some graphics. And then I have a tender somewhere for this thing that's basically identical to what it needs. I just gotta find it. I don't know where it is. Still waiting for the tender for the 412-2. I put DCC sound in that thing temporarily, just Mickey Mouse inside that tender, just to see how the low speed was. I'll do a video on that later on once I get the tender for it. But I'm pretty happy with this thing. I started building this Sunday afternoon. I bought 3 080s that were busted up on eBay to make this chassis. I think I paid maybe $60 for the 3. probably too much, but I really wanted to build this locomotive. I don't know why, but I kind of like it. I like building articulated locomotives. They're really fun to build. They're a challenge. So I have to finish the front pilot. I'll just show you what's going on inside this mess. Please don't judge. It's just a temporary until I iron out all the bugs. Alright, so what I have here is a bunch of lead. It's taped together. It goes over all this. This is a 5-pole motor. These are both the same 5-pole motors. Skew wound, 10,000 RPM, about 165 GCMs of torque. They're pretty strong. I would have really liked to use a Pico motor that has 160 GCM of torque, but unfortunately they won't fit. They're too damn big. So these pieces here are the bottom plates of other rivarossi trains. There's one here in the back, one in the front. They're bonded. I gouged up the plastic, crazy glue, and baking soda. Believe it or not, that is strong as hell. If I have to break that out, I need a pair of pliers. There's a piece of steel bonded to the top of each gearbox, roughly in the center of the truck to try to keep the weight in the center, to keep the wheels on the track. Unfortunately, this one here had to go a little bit to the rear of the, not in the center of the truck, unfortunately. Reason being is because I needed the motor to be able to move. And unfortunately, if the pivot is in the middle, it screws up the geometry of the whole thing. So it had to be in the back. So the front of the truck moves more than the back, obviously, because it has more of a swing. So then what I did was here I used the some AHM drive shaft pieces out of a diesel, and I cut it and used a rubber coupling. I used a rubber, basically silicone food grade hose to go to the motor. And instead of just going with one drive shaft, a piece of rubber in there, I needed this to slide in and out in order to have some play. The back motor doesn't matter because it's mounted to the truck and it moves back and forth. Everything is just masking taped because I have to keep taking it apart and screwing with it. The pieces of metal that are bonded to the top were the pieces of the 080s that originally held the motor. I think they were made out of brass. I cut them in half, utilized the hole that was already there, shaped it like an oval, like a racetrack, put some cuts in it so the glue and the baking soda would have something to stick to. And I soldered the little brass piece that's on the back of the drivers, the Rivarossi drivers, that little brass piece that the driver screws into. I soldered that into the holes. I did the front and the back the same. I heated that up a little bit with the torch and kind of melted it into the cover, but not a lot, just enough to make an impression so it would stay there. I sanded all the plastic down and then glued it in baking soda on top of it. It's strong as hell. It's not going anywhere. Anybody that thinks it won't hurt, it won't. It's as strong as epoxy. It's harder to drill than plastic. It's definitely harder to sand than plastic. It's probably the strongest crap on this train other than the metal. I did both the same. I had to make sure that once I did that, that I sanded the inside of the cover, because when you heat it up and melt this piece of metal into it, it kind of distorts the plastic and you don't want it hitting the worm gear. So I did that on both of them. These transmission covers still come off, they're not glued on, so I can grease them and whatnot. So that's about it. As far as hold on for a minute. I'm probably going to bore some people. Now, keep in mind this is still a work in progress. The this is the section of the frame that I added. Okay, what I did was I lopped off the back half that used to have the bar on it, and I lopped that off. Then I grinded it down so it was straight, and then I took a piece from another Rivarossi chassis and put it in there. And what I did was, when I lopped this section off, I left a little bit of plastic. I used a Dremel, and I had, obviously the wheels and everything were out of it, and I had water dripping on it so it wouldn't overheat and melt the plastic. And then so what I had was the metal and the plastic, and I the same thing with this, the metal and the plastic, and then I dug out a channel on either side, lined them all up, put a little bit of crazy glue in there, baking soda, crazy glue, baking soda, crazy glue, and then sanded it all back down, grinded it all back down so it was straight. I mean, obviously the frame has to be painted. So that's what it looks like. Now, I don't need this wheel to make electrical connection. I really don't care if it does or not. The other three drivers do. But if I wanted to, I could just solder a wire to the back of this and loop it to this frame. Now, with other trains, I've removed the plastic out of the metal frame and soldered them in place and then put the plastic back in. That's a pain in the ass to try to do with this frame. So I wasn't doing that. It's definitely strong enough. I've already dropped it twice and nothing broke. You know, I dropped it 4 or 5 feet off, you know, carrying it. I dropped it and it hit a hardwood floor, and it didn't break. So I did the back the same. It's not the neatest job, but you can kind of see in there. And then when I was done, I had to grind that whole area out. And you have to be very careful because there's no metal left over. It's very thin. I had to grind it out so that truck would fit in there and be able to, the trailing truck would be able to travel. So once I did that, I did the same thing. I filled the channels and everything with crazy glue and baking soda. And if you do it right, it'll harden like a rock. It will not come apart. All it's doing is adding strength. The metal is still there. It's just, you could bend it if I hadn't done that. Then of course I put this back in. And that's that. This is the set of wheels that I stopped from sliding up and down. You can see this set of wheels moves up and down. This set here doesn't. It's more solid like these. I just put a very thin piece of metal underneath for this axle to sit on. Now, I originally had a spring here, and what was happening, it was when I was going over switches, it got caught, and it shorted out, and the short melted the spring. So, because it had to hang down so low. So this is a piece of Lexan that I bent, and it's acting like a spring. It spring loads this. So it's basically a plastic spring. I've done the same thing with this front truck. It's kind of Mickey Mouse, but it works. I've done it on a lot of trains. So this gives it a little bit of, you know, just enough to keep the tension on the rails, so the front trucks don't, the front or the rear truck doesn't derail. And then every now and then, if you have to, you just grab a hold of it and pull it back a little bit and add a little bit more tension to it. No harm, no foul. So that's that. This is a long video. I hope I didn't bore you. If you have any questions, leave a comment. Probably wondering what that big lump is. This truck was broken when I got it, so I glued it back together, and that's baking soda because there was a piece missing. I just have to use the Dremel and sand it back down, put some shape in it. That's the set of wheels that I had to take the drivers off. I'm not happy about that, but it is what it is. Out of all the trains that I made, this is the second one that has a set of blind drivers on it. Unfortunately. But, so that's that. Like I said, thank you very much for watching, and I'm horrible at filming stuff. So thank you for your patience, and if you have any questions, please ask, leave a comment. I do respond to every single comment, one way or the other. Have a great weekend, and thanks again.